Captain Jake Morrison had always prided himself on running a tight ship, which was ironic considering his cargo vessel looked like it had been assembled from spare parts by a committee of optimistic drunks. The wandering star groaned through space with the enthusiasm of a reluctant teenager, held together by determination, prayer, and enough duct tape to qualify as a structural material. He was conducting his weekly inventory check when he heard it, a sound that definitely didn't belong in a cargo hold full of agricultural equipment and medical supplies. A soft shuffling, like someone trying very hard not to be noticed. "Hello?" Jake called out, feeling only slightly ridiculous for talking to his cargo. "If there's a sentient being in here, now would be a good time to make yourself known before I accidentally space you during the next atmospheric purge." A small face peered out from behind a crate of hydroponic fertilizers. Human, maybe 6 years old, with dark hair that looked like it had been cut with a plasma torch and eyes too old for someone who should still believe in fairy tales. "Please don't tell them I'm here," the child whispered. Jake set down his scanner and crouched to appear less intimidating, which was challenging given that he stood 2 meters tall and had the general appearance of someone who wrestled asteroids for entertainment. "Tell who, kid?" "The white coat people. They want to do more tests." The way the boy said "tests" made Jake's stomach clench. He'd heard that particular tone before, in military hospitals where soldiers whispered about experimental treatments and classified medical procedures. "What's your name?" "Alex." "At least, I think it is. Sometimes they called me Subject 12, but I like Alex better." Jake felt something cold settle between his shoulder blades. "Where are your parents, Alex?" "I don't know. I remember a lady with kind eyes who sang to me, but then the white coats took me away. They said she was gone." Alex emerged fully from behind the crate, revealing clothes that were too clean, too new, and bore the unmistakable institutional quality of government-issued garments. "How did you get on my ship?" "I hid when they were loading the medical supplies." "You were arguing with the dock supervisor about shipping manifests and customs fees. You seemed safe." Jake wondered what qualified as safe in a 6-year-old's assessment criteria, especially one who spoke with the careful precision of someone who'd learned that wrong answers had consequences. "Well, Alex, you've created what we in the cargo business call a complicated situation. I can't just keep you here like a stowaway pet. I can help. I know things." "What kind of things?" Alex tilted his head in a gesture that seemed oddly adult. "There's another ship following us. They'll catch up in about 8 hours. The captain is angry because someone reported the missing medical supplies." Jake glanced at his sensor display, which showed empty space in all directions. "Kid, there's nothing on my scanners. They're running silent. But I can feel them thinking about catching us." The matter-of-fact way Alex said this raised several red flags, each more concerning than the last. Children didn't typically feel people thinking, especially people in ships that didn't exist according to standard detection equipment. "Right. Well, that's specific." Jake ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that had become habitual during his post-military career of making questionable life choices. "Alex, I need to ask you something important. Do you remember anything else about these white coat people? Like why they were interested in you?" "They said I was special. That my blood was different. They took samples every day and made me do puzzles and tests. Sometimes they brought other children, but they never stayed long." Alex's voice carried the casual tone of someone recounting grocery lists rather than medical trauma. Jake's military training kicked in, scanning for threats and exit strategies while his civilian conscience wrestled with the implications. A child with possible psychic abilities, fleeing from what sounded like a government research facility, now hiding on his ship with pursuit vessels that may or may not exist. "This is exactly the kind of situation they didn't cover in the freight hauler's manual," he muttered. "Are you going to give me back to them?" The question hit Jake harder than expected. Alex asked it without accusation or pleading, just quiet resignation that suggested he'd learned not to expect protection from adults. "No," Jake heard himself saying. No, I'm not going to give you back to anyone. Alex's smile was like sunrise after a long night shift. Really? Really? But we need to figure out what to do next, because I know about as much about taking care of kids as I do about quantum physics. What do you know about quantum physics? Absolutely nothing. Then we're in trouble. Despite everything, Jake laughed. Kid, trouble seems to be my specialty. The question is, what kind of trouble are we dealing with here? As if summoned by his words, the ship's proximity alarms began chiming. Jake's display lit up with the signature of an approaching vessel, exactly where Alex had predicted it would be. That kind of trouble, Alex said helpfully. Jake stared at the display, then at the child who'd somehow known about a ship that had been completely invisible to his sensors until 30 seconds ago. Alex, I think we need to have a longer conversation about exactly how special you are. Can we have it while we're running away? That, Jake said, already plotting an evasive course, is probably the smartest thing anyone said on this ship in months. The pursuing vessel was closing fast, but Jake had spent 5 years hauling cargo through some of the galaxy's less hospitable regions. He knew tricks that weren't in any manual, modifications that would make safety inspectors weep, and shortcuts through asteroid fields that violated several laws of physics. As the wandering star lurched into an evasive maneuver that made both passenger and pilot grateful for artificial gravity, Jake realized his quiet life of routine cargo runs had just become significantly more complicated. Alex, he said, watching their pursuers fall behind as they dove into a particularly dense asteroid cluster, I think this is the beginning of a very interesting friendship. Does this mean you're my father now? Jake nearly choked on his coffee. What? The other children at the facility, they said people who take care of you are called fathers or mothers. Since you're taking care of me. It's more complicated than that, kid. Most things are, Alex said with the wisdom of someone far older than his apparent age. But I'd like to try, if you want to. Jake looked at the child who'd appeared in his cargo hold like a refugee from someone else's nightmare, and felt something shift in his chest. Maybe it was paternal instinct, or maybe just the stubborn streak that had gotten him discharged from military service for refusing to abandon wounded civilians. Yeah, he said quietly. I think I'd like to try too. 3 weeks of unofficial fatherhood had taught Jake several important lessons. First, 6-year-olds required food approximately every 37 minutes. Second, children with possible psychic abilities had an unsettling tendency to answer questions before you asked them. Third, explaining why adults couldn't survive on a diet consisting entirely of chocolate protein bars was surprisingly difficult when your audience could sense your own doubts about nutritional science. Jake, Alex said from the co-pilot's seat, where he was supposedly learning basic navigation while actually rearranging the star charts into patterns that looked suspiciously like cartoon animals, someone important is coming to see us. How important? Jake asked, though he'd learned to trust Alex's predictions with the same faith most people reserved for gravity. Princess important. She has pointy ears and she's thinking very loud thoughts about duty and justice and something called bloodline verification. Jake's coffee went down the wrong way. Princess with pointy ears. Alex, that sounds like. The ship's communication array crackled to life with an incoming transmission bearing the official seal of the Altarian royal house. Jake stared at the display with the expression of someone watching their carefully constructed plan spontaneously combust. This is Princess Zara of Altair Prime to the vessel Wandering Star. Prepare for immediate boarding and inspection under Article 15 of the Interspecies Trade Agreement. What's Article 15? Alex asked with genuine curiosity. I have absolutely no idea, Jake muttered, but it sounds expensive. The princess's ship was a study in elegant intimidation, sleek, powerful, and equipped with enough firepower to reduce Jake's cargo hauler to component atoms. It docked with the precision of someone who performed this maneuver countless times, usually with less cooperative subjects. Princess Zara boarded with the bearing of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room she entered. Her ears were indeed pointed, elegantly curved and somehow more sophisticated than the standard human variety. She wore flowing robes that managed to look both ceremonial and practical, with the kind of subtle armor weaving that suggested royal protocol included preparation for violence. "Captain Morrison," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality common to her species, "I am Princess Zara. I believe you have something that belongs to my people." Jake, who had spent 20 minutes trying to make his cargo hold look less like a bachelor's disaster zone and more like a legitimate business operation, gestured helplessly at his surroundings. "I'm hauling agricultural equipment and medical supplies. Nothing exotic, nothing stolen, and definitely nothing royal." Her gaze fixed on Alex, who had positioned himself slightly behind Jake's legs while studying the princess with the intense focus of someone solving a particularly complex puzzle. "Is this child yours, human?" "But where is his mother?" she asked, her tone carrying implications that made Jake's throat go dry. The question hung in the air like a live grenade. Jake opened his mouth, closed it, and realized he had no idea how to answer without revealing that he'd essentially kidnapped a child from what might have been a legitimate government facility. That is, it's complicated," he finally managed. "Complicated how?" Alex stepped out from behind Jake's legs, apparently deciding that adult conversation was moving too slowly. "He rescued me from the white coat people who were doing bad tests. My mother is gone, but Jake takes care of me now and makes sure I eat vegetables even though they taste like disappointment." Princess Zara's expression shifted to something Jake couldn't quite read. "You escaped from a research facility?" "Yes. They said I was Subject 12, but I prefer Alex. It sounds more like a person's name than a thing's name." "And these tests they performed, what did they involve?" Alex considered this with the seriousness of someone filing a formal report. "Blood samples. Brain scans. Puzzles that were supposed to measure my psychic potential. Sometimes they brought other children and made us try to read each other's thoughts. I was better at it than most, which made them excited and scared at the same time." Jake watched the princess's face carefully, noting the way her ears shifted position, a sign of emotional response among Eltarians. "Princess, if you're here because of Alex, I should probably mention that he's under my protection now. I don't know what legal authority that gives me, but—" "Captain Morrison," she interrupted gently, "do you know what a hybrid child is?" "A what now?" "A child born from the genetic combination of two different species. Specifically, human and Eltarian." Jake felt the universe tilt sideways. Is that even possible?" "According to galactic law, it's forbidden. According to recent intelligence reports, it's been happening in illegal research facilities for the past decade." Alex looked up at Jake with an expression of dawning understanding. "That's why my blood was different. That's why I could do things the other children couldn't." Princess Zara knelt to Alex's eye level, her movements careful and non-threatening. "Alex, can you tell me about your abilities? What things could you do that others couldn't? I can feel when people are approaching before the sensors detect them. I understand languages I've never learned. Sometimes I dream about places I've never been but that feel like home. And—" He hesitated, glancing at Jake for encouragement. "It's okay, kid. Tell her. Sometimes I can make people feel calmer when they're scared. Like I did with Jake when he was panicking about being a father." Jake started to protest, then realized Alex was absolutely right. The overwhelming anxiety he'd felt about suddenly being responsible for a child had mysteriously eased over the past few weeks, replaced by a confidence that seemed to come from nowhere. "That's an Eltarian empathic ability," Princess Zara said softly. "Combined with human adaptability and resilience. You're remarkable, Alex. Does this mean I'm in trouble for being illegal?" The princess's laugh was like silver wind chimes. "You're not in trouble for existing, child. But the people who created you certainly are." Jake cleared his throat. "Princess, I hate to interrupt what seems like an important moment of interspecies diplomacy, but what exactly does this mean for Alex? And for me?" It means, she said, rising to her full height with regal grace, that you've accidentally become involved in one of the most significant political situations in recent galactic history. Hybrid children represent either the future of interspecies cooperation or a violation of natural law, depending on your perspective. And your perspective? My perspective is that Alex is a child who needs protection, regardless of how he came to exist. She paused, studying Jake with calculating eyes. The question is whether you're prepared to provide that protection when powerful forces discover what he represents. Alex tugged on Jake's sleeve. Jake, she's afraid. I'm sorry. Princess Zara is afraid. Not of us, but for us. Someone's been hunting hybrid children, and she's trying to find them first. The princess stared at Alex with undisguised amazement. Your empathic abilities are remarkably developed for your age. Is that good or bad? That depends, she said, on who finds you first. Jake felt that familiar cold sensation between his shoulder blades, the one that had kept him alive during his military service. Princess, exactly how much danger are we talking about here? The kind that requires royal protection and a very good hiding place. And if I refuse? Then you'll discover exactly how short the life expectancy is for people who possess inconvenient truths. Jake looked down at Alex, who was watching the conversation with the patient attention of someone accustomed to adults making decisions about his fate. The kid deserved better than being shuttled between various forms of protective custody, but Jake was beginning to realize that normal life wasn't an option for any of them. Princess, he said, I think we need to have a much longer conversation about what happens next. Indeed we do, Captain Morrison. Indeed we do. The revelation that Alex was half Altarian had been shocking enough. The discovery that Jake's own DNA somehow matched the boy's paternal genetic markers was the kind of impossible that made rational people question the nature of reality itself. This has to be a mistake, Jake said for the 15th time, staring at Princess Zara's portable genetic analyzer. I've never been to Altair Prime. I've never even met an Altarian before you. And I definitely would have remembered creating a child. The genetic match is 99.7% conclusive, Princess Zara replied with the patience of someone explaining basic physics to a particularly dense asteroid. According to these readings, you are Alex's biological father. But that's impossible. Alex, who had been quietly constructing what appeared to be a three-dimensional star map out of spare parts from Jake's toolkit, looked up with the expression of someone solving a complicated puzzle. Jake, do you remember being sick? Like, really sick, where you couldn't remember things for a while? Jake paused, his protest dying mid-sentence. There was, during my military service, I spent 3 months in a medical facility after a radiation exposure incident. They said I needed treatment for cellular damage. But I recovered completely. What kind of treatment? Princess Zara asked, her ears perking forward with interest. I don't remember much. They said the radiation had affected my memory formation during the treatment period. But I healed completely, passed all my medical evaluations, returned to active duty. Jake's voice trailed off as uncomfortable implications began arranging themselves into a pattern he didn't like. Jake, Alex said softly, I dream about a lady with dark hair who sang songs in Spanish. She was sad because she had to give me away to keep me safe. Her name was Elena. Princess Zara's fingers flew over her data pad. Dar. Elena Vasquez, xenobiologist specializing in interspecies genetic compatibility. Reported missing 18 months ago after her research facility was raided by unknown parties. Her body was never found. The pieces clicked together with the sound of Jake's worldview crashing into several immutable facts. They used my genetic material without my knowledge. During the medical treatment. It would explain how they obtained samples from military personnel, Princess Zara agreed. Your service record indicates you were an exemplary soldier. Strong, intelligent, adaptable, exactly the kind of human genetic template they'd want for their experiments. But why? What's the point of creating hybrid children? Alex looked up from his improvised star map, which Jake now realized wasn't random at all but showed the locations of several research facilities. Because we can do things nobody else can do. We can understand everyone, connect different kinds of people, help them trust each other. Or, Princess Zara added grimly, you could be used as weapons. Psychic abilities combined with human adaptability and Altarian empathic manipulation could create the perfect infiltrators or assassins. Jake felt sick. They were going to turn children into weapons. Some of them, yes. Others were probably intended as diplomatic tools or research subjects. The applications are extensive. How many others are there? Princess Zara's expression darkened. According to our intelligence, at least 40 hybrid children have been created across 12 different facilities. Most are younger than Alex, still in early development stages. We have to help them, Alex said with the matter-of-fact certainty of someone who'd never learned that adults usually made excuses for not doing the right thing. Kid, I can barely take care of you. I don't know anything about rescuing dozens of children from secret government facilities. But you'll try anyway, Alex said with complete confidence. Because that's who you are. Jake looked at the boy who'd appeared in his cargo hold and somehow become the most important thing in his universe, then at the alien princess who'd turned his simple life into something resembling an interstellar conspiracy thriller. I'm going to regret this, aren't I? Almost certainly, Princess Zara agreed. But it's the right thing to do. The right thing to do usually gets people killed in my experience. Jake, Alex said, his young voice carrying surprising authority, Dr. Elena left something for you. I can feel it in my memories, like an echo. She knew this day would come. Princess Zara's scanner beeped with an incoming data stream. We're receiving a transmission on a frequency I've never seen before. It's coming from Alex. The boy's eyes had gone slightly unfocused, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that definitely hadn't been there before. Message for Jake Morrison from Dr. Elena Vasquez. If you're hearing this, then Alex has found you, and the psychic triggers I embedded in his genetic code have activated. Jake felt his knees go weak. Elena? I'm sorry, Jake. Sorry for using your genetic material without permission, sorry for creating a child you never asked for, sorry for the danger this will bring to your life. But I ran out of options and time. The people funding this research aren't interested in creating a better future, they want to build weapons and control tools. Alex's expression remained distant as the message continued. I've hidden research data in Alex's memory, along with the locations of other facilities and the identities of children who need rescue. But more importantly, I've given him something else, the capacity to love and be loved, to choose kindness over power, to become more than what he was designed to be. Elena, Jake whispered. Take care of him, Jake. Not because genetics say you're his father, but because he needs someone who will see him as a child first and a weapon never. And if you're willing, save the others. They deserve the chance to be children too. Alex blinked, his normal awareness returning. She loved you, you know. Even though she'd never met you. She chose you because your military record showed someone who protected people even when it cost you everything. Jake sat down heavily on a cargo crate, overwhelmed by the implications of Elena's message. So now what? Now, Princess Zara said with grim determination, we go rescue 39 children from facilities that officially don't exist and unofficially have enough firepower to level city blocks. With what army? With royal diplomatic immunity, Altarian military resources, and the most stubborn cargo captain in the Outer Rim, she said with something that might have been a smile. Alex held up his improvised star map. Plus I know where they are and how to help them once we find them. Jake studied the map, noting the defensive positions, supply routes, and security weaknesses that his military training automatically catalogued. It was insane, impossible, and almost certainly suicidal. When do we start? He asked. As soon as we finish planning the most audacious rescue operation in galactic history, Princess Zara replied. And if we get caught? Alex grinned with the fearless confidence of childhood. Then we'll figure out how to get uncaught. That's what families do. Jake looked at his accidental son and his unlikely alien ally, and realized that somewhere along the way, his life had stopped being about simple cargo runs and started being about something infinitely more complicated and considerably more worthwhile. "All right then," he said. "Let's go save some kids." The rescue operation had been planned with military precision and executed with the kind of creative chaos that Jake was beginning to recognize as his signature contribution to any crisis. What was supposed to be a surgical strike on 3 research facilities had turned into a running battle across half the sector, with 39 liberated hybrid children now crowding the corridors of Princess Zara's flagship. "Jake," Alex called from the ship's observation deck, where he was helping coordinate the other children's abilities into something resembling organized assistance. "The bad guys are back, and they brought friends." Through the transparent steel viewport, Jake could see the assembled fleet of corporate security vessels, government black ops ships, and what appeared to be at least 2 military destroyers. The message was clear: return the children or face the consequences. "Well," he said to Princess Zara, who was simultaneously managing diplomatic communications and tactical readouts, "I think we've officially moved beyond complicated situation into galactic incident." "The Altarian Royal Guard is en route," she replied, her fingers dancing over control surfaces with practiced efficiency. "But there's still 6 hours out. We need to buy time." "I have an idea," Jake announced, which caused both Zara and Alex to look at him with expressions of polite concern. "Your ideas tend to involve significant property damage," Zara pointed out. "And accidentally starting food fights," Alex added helpfully. "This one's different. This one involves deliberately starting a food fight." Before either of them could object, Jake was already implementing what would later be recorded in military journals as the most unconventional defensive strategy in modern warfare. Using the ship's industrial replicators and cargo bay launch systems, he began pelting the attacking fleet with everything the kitchen could produce at maximum output. "You're firing pasta at military vessels," Zara observed with the tone of someone watching the laws of physics negotiate with insanity. "Not just pasta. Also breadsticks, protein cubes, and approximately 2 tons of that weird Altarian fruit that tastes like purple regret." The absurdity of the situation might have been lost on the attacking forces, but it wasn't lost on their sensors. Trying to target a ship through a cloud of flying food while dodging meatballs that registered as potential projectiles created enough confusion for Jake to implement Phase 2 of his plan. "Alex, I need you to connect with the other kids. All of them, simultaneously." "That's a lot of minds, Jake. I've never tried to network with so many people at once." "But you can do it." Alex looked around at the other hybrid children. Human Altarian, human Centauri, human vegan, and combinations that shouldn't have been possible but somehow were. Each child carried the confused fear of laboratory subjects who'd never experienced freedom, combined with the desperate hope of people who'd finally found someone willing to protect them. "Yeah," Alex said with growing confidence. "I think we all can." What happened next would be studied by xenopsychologists for decades. 39 hybrid children, each possessing different combinations of psychic abilities, linked their minds under Alex's coordination. The resulting network created a collective intelligence that could process information faster than computer systems and project emotional states powerful enough to affect entire ship crews. The attacking fleet found themselves suddenly overwhelmed by the collective emotional broadcast of 39 children who really wanted to go home and have families and eat ice cream and never see another laboratory again. "They're standing down," Zara reported with undisguised amazement. "All vessels are powering down weapons and withdrawing to minimum safe distance." The empathic projection worked. "Jake, they're not just standing down. Half the fleet is requesting permission to defect and join our cause." Through the viewport, Jake could see escape pods launching from several of the corporate vessels as crew members abandoned ships rather than continue pursuing children who'd shared their deepest desire for freedom and safety. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now," Princess Zara said, her official diplomatic mask slipping to reveal something that might have been wonder, we contact the Galactic Council and explain that these children aren't weapons or property or illegal experiments. They're people. And people have rights. Alex disconnected from the psychic network and stumbled slightly, caught by two other hybrid children who steadied him with the automatic support of siblings. Jake, I accessed more of Dr. Elena's memories. She left instructions for taking care of all of us. Medical information, educational programs, emotional support protocols. And she said to tell you that being a father isn't about genetics or planning or knowing what you're doing. It's about showing up when someone needs you and choosing love over fear. Jake looked around at the ship full of children who'd been created as tools but were becoming a family, at the alien princess who'd risked everything to help them, at his own hands that had somehow managed to fight off an entire fleet with kitchen equipment and sheer stubborn determination. You know what, Elena, he said to the memory of a woman he'd never met but owed everything to. I think I'm starting to figure that out. 6 months later, Jake stood in the garden of Haven Colony, watching Alex and the other hybrid children play games that involved levitating small objects and projecting rainbow-colored emotional auras. The sight of children using psychic abilities for pure fun rather than laboratory tests never failed to make him smile. Regrets? Princess Zara asked, joining him on the observation terrace. Her formal royal robes had been replaced by practical colonial clothing, though she somehow managed to make work clothes look regal. About rescuing 39 children with no parenting experience and accidentally starting an interspecies diplomatic revolution? Not even slightly. Good, because the Galactic Council has officially recognized Haven Colony as a sanctuary world for hybrid children, and they want you to serve as the primary guardian coordinator. Jake laughed. 6 months ago I was a cargo hauler who could barely keep my ship running. Now I'm apparently qualified to run an interspecies adoption agency. You're qualified because you care more about their happiness than their abilities, Zara said simply. That's rarer than you might think. Alex ran up to them, his face flushed with excitement and covered in what appeared to be bioluminescent finger paint. Jake! Zara! Come see what we built. They followed him to the center of the garden, where the hybrid children had constructed something that defied several laws of physics and most definitions of architecture. It was part playground, part art installation, and part interdimensional gateway, held together by psychic energy and a kind of creative logic that only made sense to children. It's a family tree, Alex explained proudly. Each branch represents one of us, and the roots connect us all together. See? This branch is mine, and it connects to you, Jake, because you're my choice father. And it connects to Zara because she's like our royal aunt. And it connects to Dr. Elena's memory because she's our beginning mother who made sure we could find each other. Jake stared at the impossible, beautiful structure and felt his throat tighten with emotions he didn't have names for. Alex, this is incredible. We wanted to show that families aren't just about genetics, said Maria, a human Centauri hybrid whose empathic abilities manifested as visible light patterns. They're about choosing to love each other. And about showing up when people need you, added Thomas, whose human vegan heritage gave him the ability to communicate with the colony's agricultural systems. And about making sure everyone gets enough ice cream, concluded Sophie, the youngest of the group, whose species combination remained a mystery but whose capacity for joy was unmistakable. Princess Zara knelt beside the family tree, running her fingers along connections that hummed with psychic energy. This is what Dr. Elena envisioned, isn't it? Not weapons or tools, but bridges between worlds. She wanted us to be proof that different kinds of people can become family, Alex said. And that love is stronger than fear. Jake reached out and added his own handprint to the tree's trunk, watching as the structure incorporated his touch into its living design. The other adults began to follow suit, Zara's elegant fingers, the colony's medical staff, the teachers and counselors and volunteers who'd come from across the galaxy to help. So what's next? Jake asked as the sun set over Haven Colony, painting the sky in colors that existed only on worlds where different species had learned to live together. Next, Alex said with the confidence of someone who'd learned that the universe was full of possibilities. We help other kids who need families. And we keep building bridges. And we make sure nobody ever has to be alone again. Jake looked at his chosen son, at the woman who'd become his partner in this impossible adventure, at the 39 children who taught him that family was something you built rather than something you were born into. You know what, kid, he said, pulling Alex into a hug that somehow managed to include half the other children through their psychic connections. That sounds like the best plan I've ever heard. As the stars came out over Haven Colony, the family tree continued to grow, its branches reaching toward possibilities that Dr. Elena Vasquez had dreamed of but never lived to see. In the garden below, 39 hybrid children played games that involved sharing emotions and building castles out of crystallized laughter, while their chosen father learned that sometimes the most important journeys were the ones that led you home to people you never knew you were looking for. And somewhere in the quantum echoes of memory and love, a xenobiologist who'd sacrificed everything for the future smiled and knew that her children were finally, truly free.